Awesome. Hi, Michael.
Hey Dennis, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you? Were you just rushing to get here?
No, well, sort of. No, I mean, I came from a meeting looking at a new hospital space, clinic space in one of our remote markets about 90 miles away. So I was just in the car driving and going, and then went over the financials of our organization with our CFO. And now I said hi to my wife, pet the two dogs, and now I'm on with you, Dennis. That's day in the life.
Yes, that is the new world that we're living in. It's like we're not sitting in the office in a cubicle. We're sitting here like in our real lives. We're doing real life, and that's amazing. It's such a great opportunity, a great time to be alive.
I agree. I agree. So much different than when I started in healthcare, and I know we're gonna dive into that, but there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and hi everybody. And if anybody has questions or anything, please ask. Questions are always a great way to move us along. But I guess one of the things we could start with, well, introduce yourself about who you are, where you came from,
Yeah.
your background for people who don't know Michael Meneghini, MD.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, briefly, I'm a orthopedic hip and knee surgeon, born and raised in the state of Indiana here in the U.S. and have a long academic career being in academic medicine. I did my medical school at Indiana University, and then did residency at Rush in Chicago, and my fellowship at Mayo Clinic in 2005. I've been in practice for 20 years in a variety of models, both academic at the largest medical school in the United States, which is Indiana University. I'm a full professor and climbed up the academic rank. And then most recently, I'm the founder and CEO of the Indiana Orthopedic Institute, which is a private practice model. And then probably, I think what will pertain to this conversation a bit more, Dennis, is that I'm president of the American Association of Hip and Knee Surgeons, which is the largest orthopedic subspecialty organization, professional organization in the world. So we have 6,000 hip and knee members all across the world. 4,000 of them are in the U.S. So we spend a lot of time in the advocacy world, advocating for orthopedic surgeons and their patients for access to care. We do deal with Washington, D.C. a fair amount, and then also just representing so many members in different practice models, both employed, large hospital systems, private practice, have gained a fair amount of knowledge over the years, and then also spent a fair amount of time in the private equity space and their entrance into orthopedic healthcare. So I think I had a diverse experience, and happy to share some of that with you today and as we talk through it. So thanks
Yeah,
for
and
having
that's
me.
great. Yeah, that's great. And obviously, that's a great introduction to explain that you're well qualified to have this discussion about what's actually going on in the world of healthcare, which I call sick care, and I think a lot of other people do. But I mean, for our conversation, what we spoke about earlier, and it can go in any direction, especially if anybody has questions or anything. But why is it healthcare is such a massive topic, right? Whether it's just like between people or political or whatever it is on
Yeah,
the news, whatever. But
yeah,
with all the costs going up, rising all the time, the bankruptcies,
yeah,
the healthcare, all that stuff. And you would think with all the money being pumped into the system that there would be a big difference being made. And it doesn't seem to be happening. And in the meantime, there's hospitals building $4 billion mega hospitals. And how is that?
yeah,
Like, how are they being funded? Why is it not even making a difference? And then for the purposes of our discussion, what is a
yeah.
better practical solution to stuff like that?
Yeah, we can start on that, Dennis. I think it's a great point you raised. One of the things I will tell you is you started off by saying I'm well qualified to talk about these things. I will tell you that, like many of us in the world, I've learned a lot, and I've learned probably more through my mistakes than I have my successes. And I just try and absorb as much information as possible. Let's talk about large hospital systems. So in general, the way I look at it, and I'm coming from a provider perspective, not an administrator perspective, but I have been on the administrative side. I was the director of the hip and knee center at IU for a period of time. So I understand the inner workings of large academic health centers. At the same time, I understand the private practice scenario. But when you look at why a $4 billion mega hospital is being built, it is to do that right now, the decision had to be made because these large organizations moves like the Titanic. So these decisions were made 5 years ago. Well, what did we have 5 years ago? We had the pandemic. And there was a crisis of acute care. There was a lot of money flowing from the federal government into hospitals for COVID. So hospitals, ironically, in a time of tragedy, were flush with cash. And what I would also tell you is over 50 years of physicians like myself driving revenues into large hospital systems, they have very large bank accounts. And then, so you have COVID money as a revenue stream. Now that's stopped now, but it was there for a long period of time. You have uh, you have the revenues off physicians for years who are employed, or even partner physicians, going into the banks, then being profitable. And then finally, the third one that's come under scrutiny most recently is most of them have not-for-profit status, so they get huge tax breaks, right? So that is what's come under, and this is not to get political. These are just the facts, right? You can stand on whichever side you want. These are the facts. These are not-for-profit hospitals that have billions of dollars in the banks. Now, what their administration would tell you, and I've heard them, we have to have a certain number of days on cash in times of, for planning for a crisis, if you will, a spending surge. And so if their operational budget is $1 billion a year, many hospitals would say they want 365 days of cash on hand to deploy in times of crisis. The question is whether they need that. So I would argue that many hospitals operate in the United States on about 60 to 70 days of cash on hand. Now, is that enough? Probably not. So somewhere in the middle is some sort of compromise. The question then becomes, when they're continuing to make huge revenues off patient care, then do they maintain their not-for-profit status? Because now they're getting into things like real estate. They have their bond ratings. They have investment portfolios. So now it begs the question, if you're just in the business of healthcare, fine. Okay, maybe not for profit. You're treating Medicaid, uninsured. I think that's totally legitimate. The problem with these large health systems, to continue to increase their revenues, they've gotten real estate companies now. So they have their own REITs. They have their own investment portfolios. They have venture capital companies that are doing startups. So it really begs the question, are you truly behaving like a not-for-profit organization? So they have all this money. And then they are flushed with this cash, and then they decide to build large structures, large buildings, like a $4 billion building. The problem is they made the decision 5 years ago before the market shifted dramatically into the outpatient world. So if you look at where 2026 and beyond will be, the majority of people who are otherwise healthy, like you and I, walking around right now, we needed for an orthopedic provider, that's a hip or knee replacement, it's a wrist surgery, carpal tunnel, shoulder what you name it. Most of those, we're not sick. We just need a mechanical tune-up. Our wheels are out of alignment. You need a new tire. You don't have to have you don't need a whole transmission overhaul, right? You're just going to get you don't need to go to a really expensive, huge bureaucratic hospital to get that done. And everybody acknowledges that now. And that's the problem. Is, I always say, in a rapidly changing business model or market, you got to throw where the receiver is running, not where they're sitting, or take the hockey puck and put it where the player's going, not where they're sitting now. And so they passed to the receiver right where they were standing, and they're already 10 yards beyond it now. That's the market. So I think if you look, and then the final piece of it that we have in our state a lot, that is it's in the news all the time, because the current governor's arguing with the health systems and whatever, is the really high rates that the large hospitals charge the insurance companies. And we can get into that as well, for each service that they provide. In our world, we're an ambulatory surgery center. We can offer that at a we can offer the same service, a hip replacement performed in our center versus a hip replacement performed in a large hospital. It's the same service. Carries a very different price tag. Now, If you go get a hamburger at McDonald's or you go get a deluxe hamburger at a fancy restaurant, the product might be different, right? I mean, you might get one's a massively processed hamburger that maybe doesn't taste as well. Maybe you don't even know what meat's in it. But if you go to a gourmet restaurant and you know it's, pure Angus beef or it's even Wagyu or something special, then it warrants the price tag. The problem in healthcare, it's the exact same product. Sometimes it's actually a better product in the outpatient space because you're home faster, you're healthier, you don't have the complication rates. So it's the most perverse inverted system right now, and we're struggling to put the pieces together to make it more sensible around the patient, right? And in that chaos is it's why it's going to dominate the headlines. In fact, Wall Street Journal's lead article yesterday was healthcare is propping up the US labor market. So healthcare tends to be something that withstands any recession as tech companies decide whether to lay off people, et cetera. Number one article, Wall Street, that's why it's such a big topic, is healthcare still is hiring and hiring more workers. So the labor market right now is an incredible graph that was in Wall Street yesterday, where the healthcare labor market's like this and all other labor markets are like this. So it's like people are saying, oh, the labor market's fine. It's one industry that's propelling it, and it's healthcare. It's wild. So that's where we sit. A lot more than you probably wanted to know, but that was a long-winded answer. We got into a lot of different things, but that's why these hospitals, they build behemoth hospitals because they have so much money, but they're not paying attention. And maybe they are. I don't know. I'm not in the rooms anymore because I haven't been an employed surgeon for a long time. Maybe they're in the rooms going, oh God, we missed the mark. But the building's already being up, right? Like they're already constructed, they're paid for, So now they can't go back and say, oops, we made a mistake. So now all their narrative is about justifying it, right? Oh, it's going to drop our cost. I mean, how does spending $4 billion on a building drop your cost of care? Explain that math to me. That's some funny math going on. I mean, I don't understand that math,
So,
right?
yeah, let's get into it. So it is kinda crazy. I mean, think about it. And now also, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't pay taxes either, correct?
Well, right. That's their not for profit. So on our side, we have to pay taxes because we're a for profit private practice. We still take Medicaid. We still take Medicare. Ironically, we have to pay taxes. These behemoth organizations don't pay taxes. So invariably, the way I look at it, the way you can translate it, because the rest of the state's budget or the federal budget, whatever you call it, needs to get their taxes, we, the taxpayers, are subsidizing those buildings. So they're putting up you had no say in the decision. And there's they do it under healthcare because, oh, it's treating patients, it's going to be so great. You don't realize that isn't so great. It's an
No.
antiquated, they're putting up, it's like we decided to spend $5 billion of your taxpayer money to put up a monument to the past, right? I mean, okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting that when you were talking about the business of it all, is that they take in so much money, they reinvest the money, they're constantly making more and more money off of the money that they're making, and nobody's even getting better. Now, explain so everybody understands what we're talking about. It's not just we're not just gonna spend the hour talking about a $4 billion building, but the solution is so what you're talking about, what you run your practice is a ambulatory surgery center. So
Correct.
that is like one of the reasons the hospitals make so much money, and this is to poke the bear a little bit. This is to make people a little angry, is because what Michael was just talking about, what he does is hip and knee replacement or surgeries or whatever. And that could be done in an outpatient setting. You don't need to spend the night or 2 or 3 or whatever
That's
nights
right.
where the
That's right.
hospitals are charging $10,000 a night or whatever that charge is. They're billing the insurance companies that amount, and they make more and more money, which is why they're sitting on billions of dollars. And so the
Yeah.
solution you're talking about is the ambulatory surgery center, ASCs. So I want
Correct.
people to understand what we're talking about.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah. And again, if you say that, I mean, if you go back when I graduated fellowship from Mayo Clinic in 2005, and at that time we kept people in the hospital 3 or 4 days. And what we didn't realize back then that we know now from a patient care perspective is that keeping them in the hospital, they're less sedentary. They would have a greater chance of getting blood clots or infections or whatever. And what we've realized over 2 decades is that moving people out of the hospital who aren't otherwise sick. If you're sick, you have to be in a hospital. I mean, if your lungs are collapsing, you can't breathe, you have having a heart attack, totally separate story. We're talking about the majority of healthcare, not the sick people. The majority of healthcare can be done in an outpatient setting. You're better off at your home. So when we do a hip replacement or a knee replacement, in general, it takes about an hour to do the procedure. The patients are up walking within 55 to 60 minutes typically, and they're usually on their way home about 2 or 3 hours after the procedure. Because they're at home and they're not laying in a hospital bed with their button doing either calling for a nurse to give them pain meds or or buzzing for all kinds of things they need, they actually have to get up and move around a little bit. And we tell them to get up every couple hours and move around. And they got to do it more if they want to go to the bathroom, they want to go get a snack out of the fridge, they get up and move. That movement prevents blood clots. We know that the number one cause of blood clots after a hip and knee replacement, which used to be really prevalent, is being sedentary. And now we eliminate that. So this is in the world where improving the model improves care for patients and minimizes your chance of a complication or something bad happening to you afterwards. And it actually is lower cost. It's we're back in the regular world now, not where you're paying the same price for a bad cheeseburger. We're in the regular world where you can improve quality, improve experience, and it's actually better for patients at a reduced price. That's
And
it.
so
That's innovation, right? That's we've been innovating on the clinical program side. The physicians have been innovating, improving patient care, but the hospitals are not. They're not because of the incentives aren't aligned. They're not innovating with us, and that's a tragedy right now in the United States. They're stuck in the old model for their own self preservation, and that's the problem.
yeah, that is a huge problem. And so why is this such an unpopular thing? If you're thinking, right, for people that are listening, hospitals are necessary. Like
They
Michael was
are.
just saying,
They
if you
are.
have a heart attack, if you're sick, if you get in a car accident, they're emergency services. So how do they have all this money, and what can we do to make these more positive changes? So why is this such an unpopular opinion? If it can actually help people, uh, improve people's lives, improve the economy and everything by doing what we're talking about here with the
Yeah.
ambulatory surgery centers. And it's not just what is it? ASCs.
ASCs. Yeah.
There's other
Yeah.
remote surgery centers or whatever you call
Yeah.
them, where
Yeah.
people go for care. They're like emergency centers or
Yeah. I
other.
use all. Yep. They have urgent care centers. They have all kinds of places. And let me clarify something, Dennis. Some hospital systems are actually very they are very progressive in that they have a very good ambulatory surgery center strategy. In the United States, one of the largest Catholic hospitals is Ascension, and they just did a huge partnership with AmSurge, which is a large ASC company, because they saw that the world was heading to ambulatory surgery centers, and they wanted a partnership. So right? I mean, I think that signals that they're uh, thinking along the same innovation lines, and I think that's good. So I don't want people on the post or on the podcast to think that all hospitals are negative. That's not the case, but there are some that are building large, huge mega hospitals at a time where both the economy probably doesn't support it, the patient care model doesn't support it, and we have to question that. But there are other ones that are, we have partners in our various markets that are hospital partners because we work very closely with hospitals uh, who get it, who understand that the world's migrating to the outpatient setting and that hospitals will be reserved for the really sick patients and the well patients coming for health care, keep you moving, get your tune-ups, get your labs, get your blood pressure checked. You don't need to go into a hospital for that. You go into a hospital if you're sick and you're trying to keep you alive, or they're trying to, you're really at risk of having a problem if you weren't in a hospital. They're great for that. But what we have to do in our world economy now, and I mean this wholeheartedly, we have to divide it out into the well patient, a patient who is functioning well in life and needs either wellness, preventative health care, upkeep. So, we're living so much longer that our systems break down. That's why I don't have any shortage of patients in hip and knee replacement. Those tune-ups need to be on the outpatient side where it's low cost, high quality. And then the sick patients, the ones that are, oh my gosh, I could die if I don't get treatment. That's fine. They should be in the hospitals. And then you should have some overlap where the two of them can exchange and work together. And that happens in some models. But overall, in general, right now, there's a lot of dichotomy there.
Yeah, so do you think that, that people are gonna start latching onto that or some of these mega centers, or are they still I mean, because I see, I'm sure everybody on this call, wherever you drive, you'll see if you're in a big city, they're putting, like, a billion-dollar wing on a
Yeah.
hospital. And
Yeah.
it's like and nobody the world's not getting healthier. Like, and I think some of
Right.
that goes beyond our we're talking about, hip and knee replacements and ambulatory, but there's also, the whole health system with
Yes.
the poison
Yes.
food that's out here
Yep.
and everything like
Yep.
that, which I'm really passionate about, bringing awareness to. But do
So
you
let's
think
speak about that, Dennis. Let's
yeah,
let's talk.
totally.
Let's speak about that. So if we had a society that was more focused on health and preventative health and wellness, you would need less of these large, massive buildings, most likely. Now, we're all going to the same place. I tell my patients this when they're 78 and they think they should be climbing Mount Everest. I'm like, look, we're all aging and we're all going to go in the same place, just at different rates and different times. But in general, hospitals are always going to be needed and they always, hopefully, are be good places. But I think if we had a healthier society, we would spend less of our lifetime in them, right? So and that's where the payers, the insurance companies, the governments of all the different countries, if they would focus and educate and emphasize wellness and preventative care, you would spend less of your lifetime, your total lifetime, call it 100 years. You would spend less days in a hospital in general if you focused on, and by the way, live a better quality of life. It is not good quality to be sitting in a hospital. So I think that's where, not to get political, but the current administration in the United States is all about wellness and I think there's some really good points to that. Now you can take it overboard and they're getting into the world of like vaccines and stuff. And I just wish people could stay down the middle of the fairway and step. It seems like the whole world, somebody's gonna go really far right or really far left. And like most of us are like, just use common sense, please. Like you're going too far the other way. So, but I think the message isn't a wrong one, which is what do we have in our diet? What are all these things, these preservatives? Why is the United States such a wealthy country and has such poor, health equity and health status in general? There's some reasons for that, and I think it's appropriate to dive into those reasons because it's under the whole healthcare model. The percentage of our gross domestic product that we spend on healthcare is too large. It's like 18, 19%. Can't be that way forever.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good point.
Yeah, and I think that the reason how many surgeries are you doing a week? Every week, you're personally doing like
Yeah,
15.
15, about 15 or 16 a week. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, and tell me if I'm wrong, a lot of those are from people that, um, where they're like, the reason you have a hip or a knee, uh, problem is because there's a structural issue in most cases, and a lot of
Yeah,
times,
it's
you probably see a lot of people that were obese or didn't take care of themselves, maybe they lost some weight, but they're from walking around with excessive pressure and the wrong with bad posture for over years, it wears you down. A lot of that can be avoided with a healthier lifestyle and not eating at McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Doritos, Chick-fil-A, and all the crap that's making everybody sick, which I hate and I always talk about. But that's the reason I think for most of the problems, everybody talks about how are we gonna fix the healthcare system? And we have really powerful people that have not been able to fix the healthcare system. the only way to fix the healthcare system is to remove the things that are causing the problems in the first place.
Yeah, you're gonna, you're gonna get into something that's pretty powerful here, uh, which is those things that are contributing are multi billion-dollar industries, and let's just call a spade, right? So there's got to be I mean, until we tie in the financial incentives to keep people healthy, right? Until we tie that in, because right now those companies in general, other than their own employees' health, where they have to pay some of the premiums and health insurance is very expensive for any business, that's the only, they're shielded from it, right? Because the government and the insurance companies bear the brunt of healthcare, or even us individually, because we all have, we have, if we're blessed enough to have commercial insurance, then we have our deductibles we have to pay, and out of pocket, et cetera. So they're sort of shielded from it outside of their own employees. But once you could tie those together and put the employers, um, and the government and the payers all on the hook for health, then you'd have a different model. And I do think one of the ways to get that is a phrase that people on the podcast, the audience may not be aware of. It's called value-based care. Value-based care is something that we're passionate about. It's basically going at risk for a population. The the company that I have a good relationship with, called Health Outcomes Performance Company, or HOPCO, they've been pioneers in value-based care for a long time. What you say is, I'm going to take, as a company, we'll take 200,000 lives or people in a state, and instead of the insurance company like owning all the healthcare burden, you say, we'll own it. We're going to do our best to make them healthier, and we'll share the cost savings with you. So if United pays, I'm just making up numbers, right? They pay, United Healthcare is the biggest, or one of the biggest employers. We pay $1 billion for 100 million lives or whatever. And you say, you're paying $1 billion now. We'll own it. We'll own the risk. We're going to own these lives and healthcare. We're going to make them healthier. And then instead of paying $1 billion, you'll pay 800 million. And that 200 million of savings, we'll split it with one another. How about that? That's the concept of value-based care. And it's, I would say it's in its infancy. It's more progressive in certain states in the United States, less where we are in Indiana. It's way behind. We are ripe for that. And that's what we're trying to continue innovating around that. But you have to have a certain infrastructure to do it, and certain financials, and barriers around it. But that's where I think the world, will continue to head that direction. And even the United States government has signaled they want more value-based care. They want more of these type of models. That's what you'll
Mm.
see in the future.
Yeah,
But
that
it's
is
around
interesting.
aligning those incentives, right? It's all about incentive alignment. The money and the wellness and people being healthy has to be aligned.
It does, yeah, and it is a massive overhaul that needs to
Oh my
happen, because
gosh.
it requires, there's so many moving pieces when you talk about when you started this segment right here, the companies, if you think that we have, like, financial problems now, if you remove, like, McDonald's and Coca-Cola
Oh
and
my God. Right. All,
cigarettes,
I mean,
like, all that, if you remove all that from the economy, then what?
that was
So
devastating.
yeah, it is, even
Well,
though a lot of them don't even pay taxes anyway.
you'd have to flip it. You'd have to flip it to I mean, I guess you could say, well, why hasn't some place like Whole Foods, or places that try to do a better job of making things, and I don't even know that much about them, but some of these, places that try and be more organic and have better health, why haven't they gotten as big as Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, right? So there's probably a little bit of supply and demand.
Yeah,
Human
well, and
nature isn't it, so you almost then have to align us as the patients. You have to align us to not go and eat, right? It's more expensive to eat healthy in the United States right now. That
everywhere.
just the way
Yeah,
it is.
because the reason is because the food that we eat, which is really survival food, right? It's
Yep.
meant to be like the pasta, all the preservatives, the canned foods, all that crap in the
Yeah.
store. There was this funny podcast I saw with this doctor one day, and he's like, "Stop eating crap." And he's like, "If you're wondering what is crap, when you walk into the store and you look around, That's all crap.
Oh, crap. Unless you go to
All
the
of it.
fresh produce. That's the fresh produce and veggies, or that's it, right? I mean,
And the
and
meat,
it's a
yeah,
small
and
section. It's a small section.
yeah, and you have to
Yeah.
walk through all the crap to get to it. And so the real
Yeah.
food is expensive, and the reason is, like, I've talked about this for a long time, but it's like all this where we are right now goes back to the Great Depression, like, whatever that was, 90 years ago. We came out, people were dying, families were
Yeah.
starving to death, and they were like, "How can we make this not happen again?" So they started making food, and that's where all
Yeah.
this, and then it turned into big industry, and the whole idea behind all the food in the supermarket, and this is like, we're doing a 30-second segment on a huge topic, which we could talk about
Yeah.
another time, but all of the food in the supermarket is meant to be if there's another Great Depression or a
Yeah,
world
sure.
war and you have some tuna fish and pasta in the basement, that you won't die of starvation. Now we're living on it every day, and that's what's causing these diseases. I mean, like,
It's a good perspective. That's a good perspective. No, there's no doubt. Your health is two things. Three things. What you put in your body, how active you are, and your genetics. It's a combination of all three of those things, and they each have a role.
yeah, and doing these things over an extended period of time. So the big problem, what you said, is like the real food is expensive. So this is why it's a multi-layer problem. Is because even if you can convince like the single mother of 3 kids living barely scraping by, that
Yeah.
that organic vegetables and that fresh meat is better to eat than McDonald's, she can't afford to pay $20
Yeah,
for her
that's yeah,
food, and
that's right.
so
That's
she
right.
could feed the whole family at McDonald's for, like, $8 instead
That's
of
right.
paying $20 for a healthy meal. So
That's right.
it's such a multi-layer problem, and it
You're right.
leads to obesity, which leads to structural issues, which leads them to your cutting board.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at hip and knee replacement in general, it's the same sort of three factors that I mentioned to you just now, which are, well, did you get an injury or a trauma that injured the joint? So it can come from trauma. We see a lot of knee issues in football players, right? They get near like linemen and what their knees are constantly abused. We see that. So trauma. Lindsey Vaughn, we just saw, unfortunately, her accident, her knees. She's going to end up with 2 knee replacements in her lifetime, for sure. So trauma is one. In line with the trauma is obesity because it's excessive weight over a long period of time, and the joints see it as trauma. So that's the other way the cartilage starts to break down. Is it's like it can't stand that load over a long period of time. And then there's probably a genetic component to it because we see very thin people need hip or knee replacements. Some people can be born in females with something called hip dysplasia, which is what we check babies for, and their hips are born a little bit more shallow. The sockets are, so that they have a predisposition. So that's a genetic component. They can eat as healthy as they want. They can be as skinny as they want, and they're still later on in life going to probably need hip replacement. So it's those things that all sort of add up, Dennis, to just the same thing we talked about earlier. There's genetics, there's the environmental factors, which can be injury, how active you are, how obese you are, how you protect yourself.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, and we got a couple comments. So from Patty, she's like, consumers can become a driver. Past grassroots movements have shown this. This means patients must shift their mindset, which is what we were just talking about. They must
And
shift
she's
their
right.
mindset.
Simple, not easy. Yeah, yeah, she's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Simple, not easy. I think that's exactly right. And I think more people are raising awareness to it every day, trying to educate. And that goes into the concept of health equity, which is some people have access to being educated more than others, right? If you're impoverished and you live in the mountains, you may not have the same access to, and that's to Patty's point. It's simple. It's just not easy necessarily. And we just got to push ourselves to make it easier for everybody.
And it's generational. I mean, like, none of the everything we're
Oh, yeah.
talking about, I think
Oh, yeah.
all the solutions that we're presenting here are real viable, excellent solutions. But it's going to take 20 years to really make a foundational, a real change that's going to make a
Oh,
full
yeah.
difference in the world.
Oh, yeah. It's been a journey for me to just change the way I eat and what I do compared to the way I was raised. I was raised in the Midwest in the 70s, and it seemed like there were casseroles everywhere. That was going to be my mom's go-to was casseroles and things like fried chicken. It was a very Midwestern, maybe slightly Southern diet. I mean, yeah, we had green beans and stuff like that, but you always had mac and cheese with it. I mean, it was like, but fortunately, during that time of my life, I burned calories like crazy. But if I ate like that now, oh my God, that would be horrible. But it's taken me a large portion of the middle part of my life to figure out I can't eat like that anymore. I mean, and so you see some people who can't make that shift, which is why you see the high school yearbook picture and they look like they weigh 110 pounds. And then you see them when they're 40 and you're like, whoa, what happened? Well, they didn't make the shift, right?
Yeah.
They were unable to for whatever, maybe they didn't have access to it. Uh,
Yeah, there's a
so
lot of moving pieces to that too. It's like, maybe they didn't have access to it, but again, it goes back to education and
yeah,
forming habits, which is I talk about this is like my wheelhouse here is like, creating new neural pathways. Like we we are where we are as a result of conditioning, and it starts right after we're born and we learn how to live in our parents' house and then we go out and learn how to live and we learn how to get by and survive. But most people don't thrive and they're not willing to change. We fall into comfortable lifestyles that aren't so comfortable and actually make us sick.
yeah, yeah. So one of the comments I see there about Bruce Lipton argues is it's not our genetics, it's the environment. I would say that they're both totally interrelated. And I know people believe one side or the other, but usually the environment will trigger genetic alteration. So you can trigger genes to flip on and off, and it can come from the environment. Having said that, the environment is a very powerful influencer of our genetics. And so to argue against what Bruce would say, if everybody had a perfect environment, we still wouldn't all live to the same age, right? It's not everybody would live to exactly 90 years, 2 months, 3 days, and 1 minute. So it's not, if we all lived in the exact same environment, that would not happen. So there is genetics at play. And I've seen it in my field in orthopedics. There are structural deformities you are born with. You are born with them. And the only way to alter them is if we surgically go in and do something with it or et cetera, which is the environment then influencing the genetics. So they do interplay. There's no doubt about that. That's really cannot be disputed. But the environment is very, very powerful. It's the most influential. So can you overcome your genetics with environment? In many cases, you can. There's some great work. It's been a long time since I've done it. When I've looked at it, it was at a Cleveland Clinic years ago. It's on preventative cardiology. And they showed there's some interesting studies. I gotta get the book back, but there's where people who have coronary artery disease, if they change their diet and remove all, they go to not totally vegetarian, but they remove. I think if I remember in one of the studies, they allowed seafood, if I recall, but they basically get every animal product out. It's only plant based. They could reverse the plaque in coronary artery disease. So you could actually overcome what people think is not reversible. So if you have a heart attack, you got plaque, you go on this plant-based diet and they would watch the plaque disappear. It's really amazing. And so I think and there's some truth to that. If you look at my wife likes to talk about this, the blue zones. There's certain areas of the world where people live to be 100. They're called the blue zones, right? And if you look at how they live that way, there's very strong characteristics. Like one's in Italy, one's in California. They're they are people, they don't get on a treadmill and run for an hour like we do in the United States, and like that's our fitness. They literally walk up hills every day to get to their job. They may be farmers and they walk a mile, 2 miles. It's low level energy increase and cardiovascular, but not high stress throughout the day. They're mostly plant based. They don't eat processed stuff. And to your point, they live a family oriented, communal, tied together life. They're close with their families, they're close with their communities. It's very consistent. And that those people have an average life expectancy far above the remaining population. It's just fascinating stuff, but it's a way that we should all, if we could only discipline ourselves to live that way, it would be, but major metropolitan areas, it's ironic because these are more rural areas. But where is like in Indiana, where I live, everybody's migrating everybody's migrating to the big city. No one wants to live in the rural areas anymore. It's this gravitation towards, high intensity, fast life, social media. Everybody go to the big cities. So we're like going the opposite of the blue zones. But yeah, we get on a we 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 force ourselves into the. I mean, it's a large community, all right, but these communities aren't 3 million people. These are smaller communities where like everybody knows each other and they're walking up the hill together. Uh, and it's
I
just a
agree.
different world.
I
That's
agree, yeah,
these.
and I think that another thing, it was funny, Dick Van Dyke just turned 100, and
Oh, did he?
they
I didn't
asked
see that.
him yeah, and they asked him, uh, what was one of the contributing factors, and he goes, "I never hated anything." Yeah, I never
Wow,
hated people,
it's
I
all
never
about your
hated.
mindset, isn't it?
It is, it's totally like, what you're talking about is stress-free, like, those areas I've heard these studies before with the blue zones, and I think
Yeah.
Japan has a like, there's just,
Yeah,
like.
there's places in Japan, I think that's right. Yep, they're all across the world. I don't know, I can't speak intelligently about them, but it's something
Yeah,
we ought to talk
but they
about at
have
some point.
low stress, right, so there is and there's always this, everybody's looking for
That's
the
right.
solution, and it's always ancient. This is all ancient wisdom. There's nothing new here, just different
I know,
marketing,
I agree.
and what it is this, and none of us wanna hear this, but the solution is always balance, the B word,
Yeah,
and none of
I
us are
agree.
good at that, and one of the reasons that none of us are good at it is because there's constant marketing to make us not good at it, right? It's like, "Take
Yeah.
this, you need more of this, look at your all your notifications all day." We're like dopamine dogs looking for red dots on our social media,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
balance, moderation, but what Dick Van Dyke said was really interesting, not hating anything or anybody, and, that's interesting, especially now, because everybody hates whoever
I
doesn't think
I know,
about
right?
their opinion the same way.
I I agree. That's a very interesting point, you're right. The world's so polarized right now. There's not a lot of Dick Van Dykes out there. Doesn't seem to
No,
be.
there aren't, and what happens when you hate somebody, your stress level goes up, your cortisol level goes up, then
Yeah.
you reach for food that's unhealthy because you want a relief from that, and then all of a sudden you're putting on weight, and then you have a knee or hip problem, and you have to go see Doctor Meneghini. It's it's a vicious
Yeah,
cycle.
we've dialed it all back. It all comes back to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the
Yeah,
it's
that's
the
right.
whole vicious cycle that we're living in right now. And
Yeah.
so to close this up, I mean, this has been a great fun talk, I think. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Or is there anything that you wanna say to leave people with, help them understand what we were talking about better with the ambulatory surgery centers, how to take better care of your health, structurally focus on keeping your skeletal system or muscular system together or everything, the kinetic chain?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good stuff out there. We've touched on a lot, but I I do think it goes back to Dennis. I think if we lived healthier lives, um, and to the point we were talking about earlier, if our environment took better care of our genetics, we wouldn't have to spend as much time in these billion-dollar mega hospitals, right? I mean, that's probably the take-home message here. We can go at length talking about the right or wrong of large mega hospitals. We're always going to need hospitals, and we need good ones. The key is for society to spend as little time in them as possible. That's the
Yeah,
take home,
it is.
right?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's totally possible, and I think there's actually strides moving in that direction. I really think there are. Like, if you look at, Warren Buffett, like, we study finance, and, uh, Warren Buffett's the best investor to ever live, but he made a huge mistake on craft. Like, when we're buying companies, we study big companies, companies that
Yeah,
are cash flow, cash machines, and so he bought Kraft years ago. He just admitted, well, he actually stepped down, but the new,
yeah,
CEO admitted that they had to let it go, and it's really the only one of the only bad decisions he ever made, but the reason is because the people are starting to buy that less. There is actually a movement towards eating healthier, less processed crap,
yeah, yeah. I think
and
that's right.
yeah, and I think it is moving in that direction. I mean, we can only hope so, but I think
Yeah,
having shows like this where people look, we have 127 people listening to us banter here, and I think it's amazing.
I'm
So,
honored. I'm honored and flattered.
yeah, me too, me too. Patty, let's keep talking and educating people. Thank you for this meaningful conversation, and thank you too. And, but yeah, I think that's it. We have to keep talking and educating people to stop eating survival food, get up and move a little. Like this morning, if anybody is here, looked at my post this morning, one of mine, I did a Substack note. I took a video of myself. I was at the gym and I was doing kind of like a core exercise with a BOSU thing. And but most people can't do it. It's like a sit up. It's like kind of an
Yeah.
extreme sit up that I was doing. But that's what it takes. I was on a podcast yesterday and this guy was like, "Tell me about your day to live a high performance focused lifestyle." I was like, "Sure." It's pretty straightforward. When I wake up, I drink a bunch of water. I try to get a liter down pretty quickly, relatively
That's
fast
great.
after I wake up,
Yep.
and then I exercise, and then I don't look at social media right away because as soon as you do that, your cortisol goes up and you start, you
Oh,
know,
yeah,
s
yeah.
your day starts spinning away from you. And, uh, and really that's it. Wake up early before everybody else because success
Yeah.
happens when everybody else is sleeping. And, if
Amen.
you keep doing that, learn something new, get rid of toxic people out of your life, hate a little less, you're gonna have a nice life. And that's really it.
Agreed. Agreed.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you, Michael. What a great conversation, and we're gonna have to do
Thank
it
you,
again.
Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Um,
It was great.
and thanks everybody for the 128 people that tuned in today. That's amazing. Thank you for coming by. And we'll see you next time. Oh
Look
wait,
forward
let's
to the
see. We
next
got
one.
one more. Nice dialogue, Michael and Dennis. Can't wait to hear Michael later in Toulouse.
Oh, yeah, I'll be in Toulouse later, that's right. I wonder if yep, I'll be there. I think